I should have never done it. I should have never opened that door. But I did, and once it was open, there was no closing it. Let me take you back to the night everything changed. The night that marked the beginning of a decision I never thought would haunt me. The night I cheated. The night I asked my husband for something unthinkable. And as I sit here now, looking back on it all, I wish, oh how I wish, I could turn back time. But there's no rewind in real life, no second chance. It started out so innocently. My husband and I had been together for almost 5 years. We were comfortable, happy even on the surface. But somewhere, deep inside, I felt unfulfilled. I wasn't just craving excitement, I was craving freedom. I didn't want to leave my husband, not at first, but I wanted to feel something again, something outside of what we had built together. I didn't plan for it to happen. I didn't plan to betray him, to step outside of our marriage. But when the opportunity came, when the right man came along, I didn't stop myself. I didn't think twice. It wasn't just about the physical act. No, it was about the escape. It was about feeling alive again in a way I hadn't in so long. But I didn't think about the consequences. I didn't think about him, my husband, the man who had been there for me through everything. The guilt came later. At first, it was just this whirlwind of excitement, of passion, of being desired by someone else. It was intoxicating, and I convinced myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line I couldn't erase. And then came the conversation, the one that changed everything. I couldn't keep the secret anymore. It was eating away at me, slowly, quietly, until one night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. We were sitting at the kitchen table, talking about nothing, just the usual routine. But the silence between us felt different that night. He could tell something was off. He could feel it. And I couldn't lie to him anymore. "Is there something you're not telling me?" he asked, looking at me with those familiar eyes that had seen every version of me, the good, the bad, and everything in between. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't know where to begin. I cheated, I whispered. The words felt like poison, slipping from my mouth before I could stop them. His face changed. His eyes hardened. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared at me, like he was trying to process the words, trying to make sense of the betrayal. And I let him. I stood there, frozen, waiting for him to say something. Anything. But he didn't. Instead, he asked the question that I had been dreading. "What do you want from me?" And I didn't know what to say. But in that moment, a thought crossed my mind. A thought that would change everything. What if we tried something different? His brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "What if we had an open marriage, just for a little while, a month? I need to feel alive again, feel like I'm not trapped in this routine." I could see the shock on his face, the confusion. He looked at me, as if trying to decide whether I was serious or just caught in some emotional moment. But I wasn't joking. "Are you out of your mind?" he asked, his voice rising, his hands tightening into fists on the table. "After what you've done, you want me to share you?" The words felt like daggers, but I didn't back down. I had already crossed the line. What was one more? "I'm not asking for forever. Just 1 month. Just 1 month of freedom. I won't do it again if it's not what I need. I just need to feel something again," I pleaded. And after what felt like an eternity of silence, he nodded, his eyes cold, distant. "Fine. 1 month," he said, his voice hollow. "But don't expect me to just forget this." At that moment, I thought I had won. I thought I had found the perfect solution to my restlessness, my craving for excitement. But I was wrong. What followed was a whirlwind, a month that started as an experiment, a way to test the limits of our relationship. But by the end, I had learned something about myself that I wasn't prepared to confront. It started with the excitement of the unknown. I was free. I felt like I could breathe again, like I could explore parts of myself that I had buried deep inside. The first time I met someone else, it felt exhilarating. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Not really. It was agreed upon. My husband knew. But with each encounter, the thrill faded. It wasn't the same. The newness of it, the rush, wore off faster than I had anticipated, and what was left was a strange emptiness that I couldn't fill. I had opened the floodgates, but now the water was flooding in, drowning me in regret. It wasn't just the sex. It was the emotional toll it took. I started to question everything I had known about my marriage, about my relationship with my husband, about myself. Was this what I wanted? Was I really happy? As the days passed, I watched him. He had changed, too. His usual warmth turned cold. He wasn't the man I married anymore. And I wasn't the woman he had once loved. We were two strangers, bound by a contract we had both violated. And that's when I realized the truth. What started as an experiment, a way to satisfy my curiosity, had turned into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The more I stepped outside of my marriage, the more I realized just how much I had taken for granted. I wanted freedom, but I hadn't prepared for the consequences. By the end of the month, I knew. I knew that I had made a terrible mistake, and there was no way to fix it. I went to him, ready to confess my regrets, to beg him to take me back, to tell him that I had learned my lesson. But when I saw him, when I looked into his eyes, I saw the betrayal reflected back at me. He had changed too. He was distant. He was hurt. And I could see that he was holding on to something I could never get back. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice steady but filled with pain. "I can't just pretend like nothing happened." And that was it. The truth hit me like a wave. We couldn't go back. We couldn't undo what had been done. I wanted to tell him everything, to explain that I was sorry, that I hadn't meant to hurt him, that I was just trying to find myself again. But the words wouldn't come. I had broken him, and in the process, I had broken myself.